Well, it's been called the second most important of the USDA crop year reports, only topped by the end of March, the opinion of many. Combination of quarterly stocks and revised acreage estimates can be pretty interesting, and this one left a lot of observers in the farm world pretty dumbstruck, I gotta say. And so many farmers I talked to just right after the report asking, what in the heck happened here? Kohli and Cavanaugh are going to try and take a whack at explaining it, or at least theorize a little bit about it, coming up here in just a moment. Kohli and Cavanaugh brought to you by the Allen County Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau is looking out for the interests of Hoosier farm families, and they're working at it every single day of the week. And, we get frustrated about this farm bill that's going on back in D.C. Hey, we got Farm Bureau people back there for that as well. Your membership supports those kinds of efforts, so go online and consider becoming a member. Go online to itpaystobeamember.org. Well, guys, anyway, you cut the baloney. The June stocks and planted acreage report is always a wild ride. Typically, in the past, we've seen things like corn move like 30 cents either direction. Sometime in the past 3 years, it's been like that. Beans have been even crazier, moving about 70 cents 2 of the past 3 years. So, this report, when it comes out, to the point, John, that you have made in the past is that this is one of the most important ones a year, a combination of acres and stocks. And, of course, at this time of year, right after we've gotten the crop in, John, there's a lot of questions we don't know answers to. So, little volatility, not a big surprise, is it?
No, that's exactly right. We got another shocker. I've seen bigger shocks than this, but still it was a big surprise, mainly in corn, because stocks in all positions as of June the 1st was 120 million bushels above the estimate. Oh, my gosh. Right now, corn's pretty bearish. We didn't need any more bearish news. Well,
No.
we really didn't. And then, we're not finished kicking the corn mark around, because the acres number came out much larger than expected, versus the March estimate. Planted corn acres came out at 91.475 million acres. That was up 1.4 million above the March estimate. 1.4 million?
Mm-hmm.
Remember those 1.6 million acres that kind of disappeared on us in March? We couldn't figure out where they went. Well, some of them showed back up again. Imagine that. And that was also, by the way, about 1.1 billion acres above the average estimate.
Yeah.
And, of course, that was a very, very bearish number. I know Dave's going to talk about beans.
Yeah. Well, we had 86.1 million acres of beans planted as of this June report. Now, we're not finished planting beans when this report was taken, so there still could be some more coming. But the average guess was 86.753, and the prospective plantings were 86.510. So beans were less than expected. No wonder the beans had a little bit of daylight going there. So I was really glad for that, except the one problem is the stocks on the beans were up. They're up 17.4, and we're looking at 97 on that. That hurts a lot to have the bean stocks higher than expected. So even with lesser acreage, look at the yield, look at the stocks being higher. It's not really bullish the beans, is it?
David, talk a little bit more about stocks, because, we've been talking about the fact that there have been so many bushels that are still in on-farm storage. And, man, some of the numbers are just staggering for that.
If you look at corn, its on farm is up 37% from what we expected it to be. Regular corn stocks are up 22%. So on farm stocks are way above what we had thought. Looks like these farmers are putting everything, their hopes into that bin, and the market's not agreeing with them.
Did I hear that right, David? The on-farm stocks were up percentage-wise more so than the total stocks were up.
Correct, yeah.
Which means that a large chunk of what's increase in these stocks is coming from farmer holding, is what you're telling me.
Right, almost 40% higher, and the total of the corn stocks were up 22% of what we expected. So there's an awful lot of corn out in the bins right now. Normally, you get a big rally once the on-farm stocks starting to go down, and as long as the stocks are high up, it weighs on the market.
John, you've talked so much about basis and watching basis. It's going to take basis to get this stuff shaken out of these bins. What's it going to take?
Well, that's a good question. What typically happens is that once the producer's got his crop planted, some rains come through and it comes out of the ground and it's looking good, then he starts to sell. When he's busy planting, he can't sell. He's busy planting. However, once the planting is completed and the crops come up and look good, then he starts to say, well, maybe I better let some go. Well, this year, what he lets go is going to be more than usual, And of course, we've got today appears to be another large corn crop coming on. She's going to need that space come fall. So he's got a deadline. He's got between now and September, maybe mid-September, to empty out his bins to make room for the new crop. And with that much corn that's in the bins, the basis right now is strong because of lack of selling. But somewhere down the pike toward the end of the season, this thing could get really, really ugly.
Yeah.
John, look at this real closely. It's almost $5 billion on the stocks as of June the 1st. It's 4.993. What is this going to be meaning to the price of corn on the downside? Because look, $5 billion corn stock?
Yes, I know.
All this corn?
All right, David, here's some numbers to throw out. We're going to get a supply-demand update in a couple of weeks. Now, since the last S&D update, we just picked up an extra 120 million bushels of corn stocks that we didn't think were there.
Yep.
And we've also picked up another 1.4 million acres of corn.
Yep.
That's going to produce more corn than we thought. Now, in the last estimate, it was estimated that the carryover for next year was going to be around just under 2.1 billion corn. Now, if you take these extra corn acres we found, you add trendline yield on the extra acres we found. Now, granted, we'll probably lower prices will bring in more demand, but we're now looking at next year's carryover, somewhere in the vicinity of 2.25 to 2.3 billion. That is a lot. That's above that 2 billion benchmark. Bottom line is that kind of a carryover suggests corn prices below $4.
We tried to let everybody know that that may be on the horizon last week, and now we're starting to see the numbers indicate that that's probably on the horizon. Listen, David, I was kind of surprised the flooding this week didn't get more reaction from the market, but you were making a pretty good case for the fact that some of this stuff came after the period that USDA was compiling numbers.
That's right, because what we're looking at is planted acreage, gentlemen. It's harvested acreage that counts, especially with the corn in the western states, because where were the biggest increases? Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas. These states out there are the ones that have suffered the most from weather. And I'm thinking that the corn market is going to have to start looking at the rain that's been coming. I saw this back in the 90s when we saw all that flooding on the Missouri River, the Mississippi River. I kept telling people, corn has to go up. It has to. Basis this flooding we've been seeing. Kohli, you're wrong. Well, guess what, folks? Rain doesn't always make grain when it's too much.
All right, David, you've got a good point. But the other side of the point is the area that was really affected is, in the whole scope of things, relatively small. You know, it's going to have an impact, and we don't know what that total impact is going to be yet. The market's going to sort that out. So therefore, the next time we get acres numbers, there could be bigger surprises than we think. But the bottom line is total impact is just not that significant, David. This thing was limited to South Dakota, northwest Iowa, Wisconsin. It affected some areas. It didn't affect others. You know how that goes. So the total amount of area is a factor, but it's not huge.
Well, I'm going to take you to task a little tiny bit here, because the people that are upriver seeing that 15 inches of rainfall on them are suggesting that, yeah, we're seeing some flooding right here, but this 15 inches of rain going to go into the river, and you folks downstream from us, you're going to have to be paying attention, because you're going to see some runoff at some point, and it could be flooding some of your acres. So pans out. How this thing plays out, we're not going to know. So I think, to your point, John, this next report coming in July is going to be a pretty important one.
It is more so than we thought it was going to be. It's going to be very significant. And of course, you know, by the time that comes out, you know, this weather situation is going to be more clear. At that point, we've gotten some additional rainfall in the Midwest so far. We've had, in some cases, too much rainfall. But most of the Midwest, I just saw a map showing the 16-day precipitation. The entire Midwest has gotten pretty good rains. And if that continues to come, that's going to weigh on the market. If things start to turn dry and we see a high-pressure dome sitting over us, that's going to turn it the other way. So we're going to have to watch this weather every single day, how it's going to affect things. But the river, remember about the river. This extra water is really good for the river, because the river's been running low for the last 2 years, and that's caused some logistics problems with barge movement. Now the river is going to get some extra rainfall, and we're going to solve that problem. There won't be as much flooding as there would have been, Rob, because it's starting from a low level.
All right. Well,
Take that into consideration.
didn't realize you were such a hydrologist. David, moving on to the livestock sector. David, I saw some interesting stuff going on this past week. One of which was it seemed like every single day this week almost that beef kept on rising. And it was like, these prices are already unbelievably high.
Yeah, it did. The cattle on feed was another surprise. It's just cattle aren't happening. The pig crop report came out this week, and it's showing less kept for breeding, more kept for market on the hogs. But show them up. I want to see them right now. I need more pork for the grocery stores. But the point is that people are getting a little bit wary of all these higher prices for meats, and they're waiting to see when the cattle people and the hog people are going to start expanding their herds. And at this point, we're not seeing big changes at this time, not like you would with the price levels the way they were and are at this time. So we got to keep a close eye on that. Plus, you're also seeing a lot of talk about bird flu and the dairy cattle out there, too. So
Right.
It's all just weighing on farmers right now out in the West because of all the situations they have to keep facing.
Well, the good news is that if corn drops below $4, feed prices are going to go down along with it. So maybe that's the bright and shining part of this whole scenario. All right, John Cavanaugh, what do you got for our final word today?
I'm going to turn from being a hydrologist into a barbed wire expert.
Okay.
I know that sounds kind of crazy, but this happens to be the 150th anniversary of the invention of barbed wire.
Get out of here.
This is a big deal in DeKalb, Illinois, because a gentleman by the name of Joseph Glidden in 1874 is given the credit for inventing barbed wire. In fact, they've got a museum there. Actually, as the story as I understand it is, Joseph Glidden was not the only person to make barbed wire. Actually, there were hundreds, starting in the 1870s, of people making some barbed wire. However, apparently, Glidden's barbed wire was considered the best, and he got the patent. So he's considered the inventor. So they're having a big celebration in DeKalb, Illinois. And the local high school's nickname for their athletic teams is the Barbs.
Huh. Glidden, I always thought he was the guy that invented paint. Kohli and Cavanaugh made possible each week by support from the Allen County Farm Bureau. And I know your local county farm bureaus are supporting Indiana agriculture every single day. And to keep up with that, Indiana Farm Bureau members can sign up for The Dispatch, the electronic newsletter that is sent out weekly during the legislative session and every other week the rest of the year. Topics covered in recent issues include the Farm Bill, the primaries, and updates from Farm Bureau task forces. To start getting The Dispatch, all you got to do is go online to infb.org. Just another one of the great benefits you get from your membership. Go online to itpaystobeamember.org.
Podcasts by Federated Media.